Hey y'all, welcome to the Clock Tower. I'm Colton here with Brandon. Got a lot to talk about today. California Trios, new announcements in English and JP. Let's get right into the San Gabriel Trios recap. 76 teams. We know 7 of the top 8 teams. Starting at the top, Kanata Marine, Escanor, and 8 Standby Quince. No surprises there. Second place, 8 Standby Quince, Bang Dream, Nanami Lisa with the Choo-Choo package. And then Fujimi 8 Standby. It's 2023. Why is Fujimi here, Brandon? Explain this.
Because it's trios, Colton. Especially going into a board-based meta, being able to bring another board-based deck. This Standby is able to push the 2/2 targets up and swinging with them. Bringing that to field makes sense. Bang Dream makes sense with the hexproof going into decks that want to bounce things. So yeah, no, it makes complete sense.
And that's, we've talked about this. We talked about this last time. Trios is where decks like this have much more an opportunity to shine. It's a more casual environment. You aren't going to necessarily play into the top of the meta every single game because you're limited to 1/3 of all decks being played being one thing potentially. So, and with no worlds on the line, it's just not as intense necessarily. So people feel like they can bring stuff like this. Fujimi is like the most vanilla 8 standby deck you're ever going to find. It's basically only plussing is hitting standbys, slamming standby. But, you know, a board of 16 is a board of 16, and there are a lot of decks that still really can't deal with that, and even the ones that can, it's hard to deal with it in multiple lanes. So it's cool to see an older set doing well in the context of trios, and like you said, Bang Dream deals with Escanor in particular pretty well because it has the hexproof on board and makes it really hard for Escanor to get its bounce to get those open lanes for bigger damage numbers. The third place team, 8 Standby Quince, 8 Standby MTI, and then we need to talk about Sora. It's very popular in JP, has been quickly gaining popularity here in English. This deck brings down a Negsoul combo as early as level 1. There's a level 2 Sora that changes into a level 3 Sora on bar with cross-turn Neg 2 Soul. You run this with the standby, level 1. You try to combo at level 1. As soon as you get there, you slam standby. You bring on the 2/1 that changes the next turn into the Sora, which then summons more Soras to board. As early as your second turn at level 1, you can have a full board of Neg 2 Soul. That is hard for anything to deal with. This is a very challenging matchup for a lot of stuff. It's kind of a gatekeeper in a lot of ways. If you don't have any way to deal with Sora, you could have a really long day if you run into more than one. And with the deck gaining more and more popularity, I think we're going to see more of it at trios.
Yeah, especially with adding in the Marine top end as kind of like a splash top end, being able to push a little more damage at the top, it definitely increases the threat of this deck for sure.
Well, it's also cheap, right? Like the Sora is pretty cheap to get down. It costs like 4 stock to get the whole Sora combo down. And then it costs 4 stock to get the whole Marine combo down. So like, you don't even need to plus a ton of stock to actually play this 3 combo deck. It's actually really efficient for being a 3 combo deck, and it denies so much damage in the mid game. It's a challenge. You have to have a game plan to deal with this because it's going to gain more popularity as the season progresses. At least I think so. Fourth place, my favorite team in all of this, another 8 Standby Quince. So first of all, 8 Standby Quince on all 4 of the top 4 teams. No surprises there. It was the best deck coming into the meta and currently remains as such. 8-bar Grand Order making an appearance. I did not expect to see an 8-bar Grand Order list at this level. What does this deck do that makes it viable in this context? How does this deck get a top 4?
So essentially it can spawn in its level 3 combo early at 2, and that combo then sits at about 17,000 power with markers. So like you're bringing in these big bodies that decks that would normally try to play for board would have a very difficult time dealing with.
It is hard to get rid of unless you just straight up have anti-changes for all of its lanes. Also, when it gets a reverse, you can pay 2, pitch 2 to then clock kick whatever was across from it and then burn 2. So it pushes additional damage and gets rid of all these things that want to stay on board with Encore effects. Things like Choo-Choo, things like quintuplets and the Shizu from Slime. All this stuff that can stay on board with Encore effects denied by the clock kick and more damage is being pushed. There are some matchups where this basically does not work at all, but there are definitely some good matchups against stuff at the top of the meta. It can prevent Kanata from going off for a second turn in a row. What it does long term, I don't think we're going to see a ton of this running around, but the deck does exist, and when it draws the right matchups, it can do quite well for itself. Finally, I'm so happy to finally be able to talk about 8-Bar Dragon Maid. I've been testing this deck for months, not exactly this 50 card list, but something that is, pretty similar in concept to this list. And when I first bought it, the Dragon Maid, I did it because I like the IP. I was not expecting to play it at anything, super high level. Maybe bring it to regionals because it's fun, but I did not have high expectations for this set. But in my testing, not only did I realize that 8-Bar is the best Dragon Maid deck, it also is legitimately a good deck. Level 1 combo, top check 3, add anything you like. It's loopable because it's on bar. The back row climax support ditches bars to go get other things so you can loop the combo even more easily. The Kanan keeps things on board and also helps you reach power thresholds. It's also got a bunch of pieces to deal with your opponent's threats. The Ilalu at 1 gets really big, it comes down for free. Level 2 Elma from the trial deck gets really big, memory kicks things that want to stick around. Not to mention the level 3 top end that is one of the most explosive top ends in the English game right now. Deck's legitimately good.
Jokingly even calling it the deck of answers, right? Because it's able to respond to a lot of different things that the meta is able to put out right now. So seeing this make its way into top 4 isn't a surprise to me, but I'm also recognized I've seen a lot of 8-Bar.
I've put hundreds of hours of work into this set, and my final list for my trios events is very similar to this. I like this a lot. There's even more tech that you can run in this, I think, to deal with even more matchups. It's very modular. You have a lot of selection. You can do it. It responds. Like, you're right. It's the deck of answers in a lot of ways. It just has responses for a ton of what's good in the meta right now. How long will that hold up? Who's to say? But in this moment right now, 8-Bar Dragon Maid, viable. 100%. All right, let's round out 5 through 8 real quick. Hololive, Kaguya, and MTI. We don't have deck lists for those. Bang Dream, Konosuba, 2K, 2 Soul, and Choice. It's the Chris, Split 2K, and the Choice Darkness at the top. And then 8 Salvage Fate. We'll talk about 8 Salvage Fate in a second. Brandon, what is going on with this Konosuba deck? This is wild. I've never seen anything like this, and I've spent a lot of time with Konosuba.
So essentially, the deck itself is playing into a lot of the utilitarian pieces for the yellow package. It's playing into a lot of the adventurer cards, as well as trying to maximize its benefits on climax placements. For example, when the 2K2 Soul combo pairs with the Adventurer Kazuma, not only are they getting the combo from the Chris, they're getting the potential on-reverse stock charge from the Kazuma, and it can be, and that card itself can get powered up when your other characters become reversed, so it kind of benefits you when your other lanes are small and crash out to step over this and actually get the additional stock. So you're like powering up specific lanes early to get those resources out. You can pair this with your early plays that you're able to get out. You're playing that fusion package, which is a relatively good fusion package, pretty efficient in getting that done to get those kind of burns in the mid game. Pretty defensive wall to step up against the things that are out there already. So it's like, it makes a lot of sense, despite the initial sticker shock of seeing this out. There actually is some pretty good rhyme and reason to this deck. And seeing Konosuba in top 8 in 2023 is still amazing. So good job to the player that ran it. But you can definitely tell it's a deck crafted.
Yeah, Konosuba as a set kind of lends itself to brewing because there are a lot of very strange effects that you can kind of piece together and make weird, fun decks out of. So it's cool to see one of those kind of Konosuba homebrews make its way to top 8. The other deck on this team was 8 Salvage Fate. Very much what you would expect. It leans more into the blue than I think most 8 Salvage lists do, but it, runs the good cards, right? It runs the Akatsuki, it runs the cigarettes combo into the Sakura top end, and it also runs that 2-1 free refresh draw as well. Last team we know about is, we don't have lists for it, but we see Fujimi, Pants Wind, Kaguya, Standby Salvage, so kind of the OG Kaguya list from before the new set, and then 8 Standby SDS, which I imagine plays into that Meliodas package a bit. All right, moving on. Let's talk about the release schedule for English. We have an update. Overlord 2 is coming out on September 1st. Tack that onto the end of the schedule behind Slime 3 Hololive 2. Still waiting on dates for Chainsaw Man, Spy Family, Guilty Gear Strive, and Azure Lane, but we have a bit of an update on Spy Family coming up in a second. Overlord, currently very good in JP. Killua wrote a very nice primer, we will link it in the description, talking about what he calls the Ainz problem and why that Overlord list is so good in JP and what it could bring to the English meta. That's not till fall, though, so not going to dig into that too much for now, but we will definitely be talking about Overlord in the very near future. Data Live 2 is the next set that comes out. It comes out on Friday. Shifting over to the JP side for a second, they had a stream last night into this morning where they announced some things for JP. Spy Family has a JP release date. Initially, we had thought that that might be a simultaneous release. It does not appear that that will be the case. That date conflicting with the Slime 3 release in English. Bocce the Rock will come out in September. Love Live School Idol Festival 2. Another Bang Dream set, the 6th Anniversary Premium Booster, will be out. Shakugan no Shana is getting a set. 2 new JoJo's expansions as well. So a lot of stuff in JP that has at least some interest in English. I would say that Bocce the Rock is almost certainly going to happen. Bang Dream is very, very likely to happen. The JoJo's expansions, I think, make a lot of sense. I would expect those to make their way over at some point. Maybes on Shakugan no Shana. A new Love Life set, it's Neo Standard with itself, but also can be mixed with the Love Life sets that are already out. So definitely some maybes on that list, but then when you add in the stuff that we already know from previous months, like Licorice Recoil and Uma Musume coming out in JP, a lot of stuff potentially on the EN radar that has been recently announced in the Japanese game.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially with the English schedule seemingly sped up, essentially kind of having a release basically every 2 weeks or so between now and August. That also can allow for potentially some more of these maybe sets to make their way into English. So definitely something worth keeping an eye out, especially as we get into 2024.
Yeah, we're looking at probably 5 to 6 months between JP releases and EN releases for most of these. We could see some expedited. There's a little window in August between Hololive and Overlord. It wouldn't surprise me to see Spy Family come out maybe a little bit earlier than normal, just because it was announced in English when it was announced in JP, so it wouldn't surprise me if it came out before the end of the year. But yeah, a lot of this is going to be 2024. We're talking about maybe potential Worlds meta, in the same way that SDS was a Worlds meta deck that came out kind of after the singles season had ended. Some of this won't be out even until next Springfest, potentially, so we're already at the point where we're looking potentially up to 12 months out for any of this stuff to come out, or at least some of it. But we expect a lot of it will probably hit shelves in the English market sometime over the winter. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back on Thursday, 5 cards, 5 minutes for DAL 2 Uncommons and Commons. On Tuesday, Brandon will have a deck tech for the new DAL set. We'll have gameplay for it the following Thursday. And in 2 weeks, another Clock Talk. We will have 2 regionals to talk about, one in Atlanta and one in Germany. Until next time, thank you so much for joining us. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and have a good one.
We'll see you then.